Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Hear Our Voices. This is your host, Khadijah D. And this is a podcast where you hear stories, give resources, and change the narrative of homelessness. Maybe I should add family homelessness in there, but it doesn't matter what kind of homelessness it is. Homelessness is homelessness, right, guys? Yes. So today, I want to tell you guys, please follow us on our social media platforms. We are growing and we're doing so much big things in the Family Action Board, which is where is our peer-led group when this podcast is under. Before we used to be on the Family Homelessness Coalition, and I was a fellow, but last year we graduated over to a Family Action Board. And it's a peer-led group by people who experience homelessness or is experiencing homelessness in New York City. So if you want to be a part of that crew, that group of amazing, right now he's ladies, but we would like the men to come in too, if you don't mind. It's very hard, I feel like hard to find men to join the group in general. And homelessness, as you know, most of the time is women in the family shelter. So that's probably why the number for our group is the dynamic of our group is the way it is. And yeah. So please follow us on every social media platform you possibly can. We have YouTube, which you're probably hearing me from here right now. We have Instagram. We have, what else do we have? We have TikTok. We're going to start doing more things on TikTok. So please follow us on those social media platforms. And yeah, thank you for coming in and being a part of this family. If you're going to be a person on here to give resources, we definitely need that. We always need that. We only take resources from New York City in general. Maybe from New York State-ish, depending how far. If it's way up near Canada, probably not going to be helpful as much. But if like Rochester, like not that far out from New York City, basically. I'm thinking more of how our city first voucher kind of goes and branches out there. Um, and if you're a person who has like housing for people with Section 8 and stuff like that, we'd love to have you too. And we'd love to hear more about that. But yes, definitely DM us. Information will be down below. But let's get into our guest today. Our guest today for the podcast is James, and he'll tell you a little bit about who James is. So, James, tell the listeners who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, my name is James Norton. I'm the Government Community Affairs Manager for NAMI New York State. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We're the largest grassroots advocacy organization for mental health in the United States. We have over 600 affiliates nationwide. We have a national org, but when you join your national org, you join your state office, and you join your local affiliate. I'll do quick shout outs to our NAMI NYC Metro, our
Okay.
NAMI Queens Nassau, NAMI Staten Island, NAMI Westchester, NAMI Rockland, NAMI Suffolk. We got chapters all over the state, about 25 of them.
Oh, wow.
Uh, so we are trying to do whatever we can to support individuals and families with mental health issues. We offer things like support groups, family to family, peer to peer. There's also a home front, which is specifically for veterans and veterans' families. There's ones for law enforcement, first responders. Per ER is one for ER staff. We also do NAMI Connections, NAMI Basics, a whole host of different educational programs, outreach efforts. Uh, my job specifically is to do community outreach and a lot of policy level like advocacy for the state office. But all of our local affiliates, they're reaching out to their local county executives, their county legislators, their community services boards, their continuums of care boards, anything we could do to affect the way that mental health is treated in the communities.
Yes, mental health is very interesting. Because a lot of people sometimes don't even know they're going through a mental health crisis sometimes when it's happening. It just kind of hit them. And I feel like in homelessness, that happens a lot of times because a lot of people go into shelter or end up being street homeless. And the pressure of being in that environment what actually causes certain things to happen that if they were not in that environment, they would probably not have or been reduced in that way. Again, if you don't know, I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to school for that. I went to school for theater. But like example for myself, when I went into shelter, I was a little bit depressed by then. I was like, I was trying to avoid going to shelter. I didn't want to go to this place, but when I got there, it got worse over time being in a place for over a year and not getting housing, not getting help. You feel like the workers are not helping because they really weren't. till I got new workers and they started doing an amazing job and talking to me and really going through my problems. So being in the situation can make you more in that particular way. And I think, especially, I feel like in certain communities, people kind of push it under the rug and not actually solve the problem. And that's one thing we want to bring out on this podcast today is that it's okay if you have it, just make sure you get help for the particular situation. And if you don't get help for certain things, it can get worse. So it's better if you try to nip it in the bud and be on a doctor's supervision for certain things. Because some things are more crucial than others, I would say. I don't know all the clinical terms for every single mental disability that people have out there, but some can be worse than others. And if you don't get proper help for it, it's not going to be good for you and good for your family. So, but what kind of policies and stuff are you working on right now? Because you said you do policies and things like that.
So right now we're trying to get the word out about Mental Health Awareness Month for the month of May. So we're encouraging everybody to go out and try to raise awareness for mental health issues. But from a policy standpoint, one of the things we've been trying to promote is the continuums of care boards. The folks who sit on these like local boards that kind of set plans for mental health services in New York State. Uh, but to your point, a lot of folks go into these shelters and they start to develop these mental health issues, and I think a lot of folks really confuse the issue of mental health and homelessness.
Right,
Right? They think that, oh, that's how the person became that way, or they have developed it for that reason.
right,
No, it's a lot of times someone with a severe mental illness is just less resistant to the forces that make homelessness commonplace in New York, unfortunately. Whether it's rent increases or whether it's uh, the need for assistance, or a lot of the policies that I end up working on around mental health parity and getting people covered for the services that they're supposed to get, either from their insurance or through Medicaid. Uh, it's really important that people get that early treatment, right? Much like any other disease or illness, if you leave it alone or leave it untreated, it will only really get worse.
right,
And so the point of our advocacy is to help get people aware of their mental health issues and try to address them in ways that are really stigma free, uh, as well as kind of change the systems to be more accessible to more folks, right? I'm sure if somebody's listening to this podcast, right, they're very aware of systemic barriers. Unfortunately, those are really commonplace in the mental health systems. That's what we end up working on.
right.
There's really low reimbursement rates for a lot of mental health services. There's unfortunately ghost networks for a lot of health insurance. Health insurances were supposed to be providing these services, and there's a lot of things we're trying to do to help address the crisis points. Right, if somebody goes into a mental health crisis, are they being engaged by uh, 988 or a mobile crisis unit, or are they being approached by ideally uh, law enforcement who are trained in something called CIT, crisis intervention training, if that is what is necessary and the person presents that level of harm. But ideally, uh, we have a program like Daniel's Law that we advocate for, where
Mhm.
peer providers and EMTs would be the responders.
Right,
We kind of break up our advocacy into 5 areas: equitable access to mental health supports, supporting the behavioral health workforce, addressing crisis and voluntary commitment AOT, addressing the way the criminal justice system treats those with mental health issues, and finally the supports for youth and families. Our next gen youth advocacy day is actually May 11th, so quick plug for that.
yes,
We'll be going up to the Capitol advocating for a lot of youth mental health issues, especially things around like the Youth Justice Innovation Fund, Solutions Not Suspensions, which helps address the way schools are treating behavioral health needs. Ideally, a bill that would increase the amount of reimbursement folks get for providing youth mental health services, and a whole host of other things. I think we have about 48 bills. There's no shortage of legislation we're trying to move this year. Uh, but overarchingly, we're trying to fix the system.
the system is definitely broken, and I feel like it's broken in many parts and it's fractured, to be honest. And we have a lot of work to do. So if you feel like you're a person who's like, there's nothing for me to do in my community, there is things. You say there's something, I want to say, you said May 11th or was it May 12th? that's coming up.
Yeah, May 11th is our Youth Advocacy Day for our Next Gen program.
So if you want to be a part of that and learn more, we'll have information down below to make sure that you are informed about those things. There's a lot of issues I feel like we go through, especially in New York City. We go through life, we're just kind of, I feel like in New York City with the hustle culture, we're just trying to make it, pay rent, pay for food. And sometimes just focusing on those things, we don't take care of ourselves, and some of these things creep up on us without us not realizing it, and not taking self-care. And I think self-care has been a word for the past couple of years that people just use, but maybe we should, even though I feel like it's overused, so people in New York City, we need to overuse that word. We don't take care of ourselves not as much as we're supposed to. We're just trying to literally, a lot of people work more than one job because the rent is so high here. If you have a child, you have to take them to school. If you have more than one kid, they might go to multiple schools. They might have also a behavioral problem. They might have a mental health problem themselves. And doing all these things is and not taking care of yourself, it can be weighing on your body and your mental health. It's like if you have a car, after a certain amount of miles, from what I understand, first of all, you got to gas it, but you also have to do maintenance. And if you don't take care of your body how you take care of your car, you're going to break down as well. You have to do the transmission. I don't know again about cars, tire rotation, for what I understand. Those small things make a difference in how your car is running and how long it can last. If you don't take care of these things, your car's going to break down faster. You're not going to be able to use it as with longevities, just like your body. If you don't take care of your mental health, you don't take care of your body in general, you're not going to last. You could last long, but you might not be last long and older in a good condition because you didn't take care of it before. We see with
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, I mean, that's something we talk about a lot when we do trainings around like vicarious trauma. The idea that like the stressors kind of build up over time
right,
and then lead to it. And then you also need to have the ability to de-stress. It's really important to delineate between like eustress and de-stress, the good stresses. Like, last year I got married and I bought a house, and those are all really great,
congratulations.
but they were stressful, right? And then some things that other people that that you were just mentioning, right? Like the ability to make rent when you're paying two jobs, that's de-stress. That's really stressful
Right.
type things. And good stress or bad stress, you need the ability to kind of take that pause and de-stress.
That's for sure. And I was thinking, like you said, over time, I think also about like trauma. If say, if people in shelter, if you don't know, DV, domestic violence, is the highest reason rates that family in shelter go into. Um, I'm thinking about the child and the adult. If the child grew up seeing violence in the home, that's a stressor on their mental and how they survive in a lifetime, right? It also stresses on the person who is happening to, because they have to think about a lot of times when you're in like fight or flight mode, you think about every turn of the corner, you're like, oh my God, something's gonna happen. It's a lot of different things that go in your mind. And if you don't get help for those things to kind of deprogram you from those things happening, that's a problem. But also that child that who witnessed everything, now they think, in some people, they might go either way. They might think hitting somebody, which is not the only way domestic violence shows up in families or people in general, but they might think it's okay for hitting somebody and to talk to a person a certain way because that's how they saw it, or they might always shy away from even being in relationships because they see those things happening. There's a balance in all things that we do. And if you don't get that child, you might think they might not seen it, they might not heard it, but if you're in the house with that child and you're getting beaten, or you're not, even if they're not in the room, if they hear it happening, that still could be a mental trauma on that child. And you need to get that child help. I think a lot of times, I'm not saying every single person who's in the situation um don't think about it, but sometimes people forget about the children in the situations, and they don't think about how it affected their lives as much. They said there's a child, they're resilient, but if you as an adult could hardly go through it because it's happening to you, even though they're the second character or the bystander in the story, they're still affected, and it might not be in the same way as you, but it's still affecting you in general. So I think mental health is definitely very important. It comes to people in many ways. It could come because of a grief, because somebody died in your family, or or you divorce. It comes in many ways, and we have to make sure that we're taking care of those particular things. And we need things like insurance to be right. Probably should honestly be free, because if everybody's mental stability is on point, I believe our community could work a little bit better. We have a lot of people just walking around with just so much problems in their life because the system doesn't provide this thing relatively free. We know 988, right? But I feel like it's not a person you're seeing every single week. It's just a number you can call. Granted, I have never called the number. I just recommended it to people. But you need a person that you feel comfortable with and you learn a relationship over time to talk to and get help with and things like that. And I think those kind of things should be, I know it might cost the taxpayers money, but at this point we pay into the system and some of our money is going to things we don't care about. But childcare, mental health, going to doctors in general, those things should be, I think, provided to the people to make sure that we're okay so we can survive in society and be better for our community and for our country. That's just my opinion, but I think this would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think we talk a lot about mental health care in the clinical right, but we definitely also need to make it focused in the community,
Right,
right? The ability to have the supportive network around you and the support that can be there when you need childcare because you need to go to a job interview that day,
right,
right? Or you need somebody who can help you out, like small loan if you're there, or even just to be a good friend and listen to you. I We do try to expand services that are available for free. A quick plug for the something called the CCBHC, and those are kind of free mental health centers around the state.
okay,
Uh, so they're uh, community behavioral health clinics that can provide mental health and substance use disorders. They're funded by SAMHSA, the federal agency, the uh, Substance Addiction and Mental Health Services,
right.
to provide that kind of like behavioral health services. But there's definitely not enough of them. We've been working with the governor's office. We've worked with OMH. We've greatly expanded them,
Right.
but there's still a lot of work to do to expand that access to folks.
Is there like a long waiting period for it, or is it just how does that work in particular in community when people want to get help in that particular environment, in that place that you're talking about?
I wouldn't say that it's a long waiting period. It just is to some extent an amount of awareness.
Got it.
Uh, so again, a certified community behavioral health clinic, CCBHC, they're open. Well, crisis services for them is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but they can also set up appointments for ongoing services for folks who need it. Uh, we also try to work with uh, community behavioral health centers, right? Those community type programs that can provide therapy to folks. But we definitely need to work on one, the workforce, right? We've seen a lot of folks who are working as social workers, mental health counselors themselves, and are having a hard time making ends meet,
Right.
especially those in the New York City area. And so part of our advocacy is supporting the workforce so that there's enough staff to work at these locations. And as there's more staff, there's more services.
I definitely am 100% behind that. I think a lot of times in this work, we we hear a lot of they need services, like example at a shelter. They need people there to be able to help the people there, as in the clients that's there. But I also want to add in to help the workers. The workers are all they are one thing, they're underpaid and they're overworked. So we need more workers to do the job itself. But they also need to be paying people properly so they could be able to survive in New York City. If fun fact, if you are new here or not, um, a lot of city workers actually are in our shelters more than you would actually think. So if you go to a HRA office or if you go to certain city jobs and you think, oh my gosh, this person has an attitude, sometimes they do. I'm not going to say anything. Sometimes their attitude need to be changed, but you got to think about the stressors in their life. They might be in shelter. They might have other problems. And yes, they should not bring that to the table when they're working because it's a job and they're getting paid for it. But their life situation might be as similar to yours and you don't even realize it because they have a job and they're sitting in front of you giving you services. So I think also like in a shelter, a caseworker who hears a person's problem, they might hear a DV situation. A lot of times, like I said before, DV survivors are the highest people in our shelters in New York City for families. And if they have 20 people on their roll, but 15 of them are DV survivors, and because DV survivors don't sometimes they may or may not have a therapist, counselor, a friend to talk to. The person they were with probably isolated them, which happens a lot to a lot of people. They're telling this to their caseworker because that's the person they probably see all the time if they're comfortable with them. Not all caseworkers are made the same. Some can be more great, some people can be more, not as great. But if that person has 15 people who's telling me the story all the time, oh my God, he did this to me. Oh my God, he took my money. Oh, it could be all these things, right? Now this worker who is underpaid and overworked is now having stressors from their job because they're internalizing these things. A lot of people do. If you have empathy, you might take on the person's problem even though it's not yours. Because like, oh my God, the baby got hurt because of this. It could be a lot of things, right? And now this person needs mental health services, but sometimes we think about only the clients and not think about the workers themselves. So I think it needs to be a well-rounded things. Even doctors, you might say, doctors, like we heard the rate of suicidal for doctors are pretty high from what I would never think that it would be high, but it's higher than you think it is if you look it up. Um, and they, especially in from what I understand in COVID, it was traumatizing for a lot of people to go through to see. Granted, they went to school for this. They were prepared for death. If you work in the I think health field, a nurse, a doctor, um, there's certain things like those kind of particular things. If you know you're gonna be in that field, you expect to see death because I think it's part of the job. If you're like a janitor, I would not think so. That's like, but because of the situation of COVID, that waned down, people are dying so fast and it waned on people's mental health. And people are dropping like flies around them. And people like that, people like I think like their doctors, they're fine. No, they're struggling just like you. You're struggling in your house. They're struggling on the job. Like, let's think about that. So we have to always think about the people who are giving the services and how they are also they need help and to make sure those things are offered out. I know some occupations do give mental health things. So some people are covered, but I feel like in certain areas, other people need to get covered also in other areas, but people don't think they're kind of neglected in certain occupations. But yeah.
Yeah. So one of the bills we advocated for last term was to expand the ability to claim workers' comp claims for like first responders. Right,
Mm,
they're undergoing something called vicarious trauma. It's one thing
right,
that really actually has a huge factor in PTSD. And vicarious trauma doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't experiencing trauma yourself, but it's the experience of listening to individuals or recounting their victimization, seeing videos, or more broadly, there's this idea of like moral injury that it's a distressing psychological or spiritual event that kind of challenges the core moral beliefs somebody has.
right,
And those things are really real, and I think they lead to a lot of post-acute distress disorder, PADD, or PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Those things can really kind of build up over time, and they'll cause guilt, they'll cause shame, they'll cause anger, and they unfortunately lead to a lot of like alienation between an individual and their support network, which is at a time they probably needed the most.
right,
But it it's really hard to kind of stare into the void, so to speak. I my background is in emergency services before I got into the field of like prevention and advocacy work. Uh, is you are regularly seeing people at kind of the worst points in their life, and to you that's daily life,
right,
and that itself can put you into your own state of chronic like survival mode, this
right,
kind of permanent state of surviving just to make it through your workday every day. And it can be extremely traumatic, but part of you also feels really guilty in that survivor's guilt of like, well, I'm not the person who was hurt.
right.
And like that person's also in survival mode. It's a great example of like there's this idea of like hurt people hurt people. It's like, no, a lot of people are just trying to struggle to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And that puts them in very unfortunate situations. And that's very true when we're talking about domestic violence issues or mental health issues or addiction issues that kind of play into homelessness, right? We're talking about a group of people who are experiencing these really traumatic and hard life circumstances, who then are still just struggling to try to keep the basics together,
Right,
like food and shelter, and trying to maintain family relationships and trying to maintain a good work life. And it gets extremely overwhelming, which is why we're advocating not just, oh, if you have schizophrenia, go get treatment. Like, no, everybody has mental health.
right,
The things we talk about with like a surgeon, if you found out your surgeon had depression issues, you'd think twice about getting surgery from them. Like, no, mental health, everybody has mental health. Literally everybody you've ever talked to has mental health. And about 1 in 5 people in the United States has a mental health condition.
Right.
And that, you know, most people you're talking to likely have one.
Mm, that's true. So the next time you feel like being nasty to somebody, think about their mental stability in general. We should all be kind and to be honest, I feel like especially for New Yorkers can be kind, and then some people could just be very nasty. That might be everywhere, but I think it's because we're so packed with people. It just seemed like people say New Yorkers are mean, and we're not. People are very nice. When I was had my babies, they helped me up the stroller with up the stairs and things like that, so they can be nice. But before you make a nasty comment about somebody or say something what doesn't, it's not as tasteful, right? Think about what they might be going through that you don't see and how what you say can affect their lives. And we have to be very mindful of what we do and how we say and how we treat people. Because one day that could be you and you want a person to understand what you're going through, but because you're not being understanding yourself, that might not come back to you. You know what I'm saying? But it's definitely a thing. We have to be very, very careful on how we do things and how we approach things in general and be let's be better people. And don't feel away. Don't feel that if, like was said, everybody at this point have mental health. Think about postpartum, how much moms go through that, which is kind of just push on. We had talked about it before about the mom blues on this podcast, and how some people, if you already are, depressed from before, it just makes it worse. If you're a person who just kind of have it now, is not as bad as the lady was saying, but you just never know somebody's situation, and don't feel bad if you need help. Everybody needs help sometime. And a lot of times when people are depressed or certain things, check with your friends. You'd be very surprised when people are going through, like was said before, going through situations, they isolate themselves. And your mind kind of tell you like I feel like it plays almost a trick on you, like you don't need these people, or the people are just not gonna help be helpful. And it's like your mind almost trying to protect itself because he's like, if a person say I can't talk to you right now, it almost feel like the end of the world. What is it's really not. When you're going through crisis, it might feel like that. So you have to be very mindful how you treat people. If you haven't heard from a friend in a while, check on your friends. You might think it's like, I know I'm busy, especially in New York City. We're busy, but to check up on somebody you have not talked to in a long time, if you have good relationships with them, check on your friend and make sure they're okay. Just saying hi, telling her mom she does a good job. I have this one person who texts me once in a while, like, "You're doing a good job, Khadijah." And sometimes I feel like I'm failing as a parent. This lady sees me often, so she knows how I am with my child. And my daughter is 10, so she's going through that tween age. And I feel like, oh my God, this is stressing me out. But having somebody who I'm an outside seeing in and saying, "You're doing a great job," it makes me feel happy. It makes me feel like maybe I can make it another couple of years until she becomes an adult and understands how real life is. Don't forget about others. Mental health is a tricky thing, and I feel like sometimes a lot of times it works against you and how you are perceived and how you do things. And just be a kind person. That's all basically what I'm saying. Be kind because people need it. We're going through so much right now, with everything in the world happening. So people need kind
Yeah.
words.
I mean, kindness and that kind of understanding is really important. I actually really appreciate you sharing that parenting can be stressful. And, I try to also share my experience with the vicarious trauma thing. One of the taglines, I guess, of the Mental Health Awareness Month this year is that every story, every story shared turns silence into connection.
Yes.
It's this idea that like we can all use our voice. Shout out to the Hear Our Voices podcast that I'm
Thank
currently
you.
on. Right? This idea that like as we share our stories and as we share our voice, it kind of takes away that isolation
Yeah.
that forms when people are going that are struggling. A mentor of mine, Judy Moffat, used to say that addiction is the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. This
Mm.
idea that like, well, we replaced, if you talk about the support groups that NAMI offers or the support groups Families Together or AA or a lot of these like mutual aid organizations, because well, NAMI is like an advocacy group. We're not really a treatment provider Like the core of it is it was founded by two women who felt that there weren't enough services for their son. But
Mm,
these two women found connection together and were able to turn it into the largest grassroots mental health advocacy organization in the United States, right? That's the power of finding the connection between people who are going through the same struggles you are and ending that kind of silence and turning it back into the connection, finding your community. Uh, that's really what Mental Health Awareness Month is about, but it's about a lot of what mental health is about. It's trying to find those folks who are going through the same struggles you are and sharing openly and building that connection between people, not just kind of falling back into the guilt, the shame, the stigma that follows mental health or homelessness or incarceration or all of these other things that can be very isolating.
it's so true. We need each other. Like we all need each other in the big scheme of things. You might say, I could just do it by myself. And I'm a person, I'd be like, I don't need no help. But in general, like generally, we all need help. We need a person to, I get water sent to my apartment. So I need a person to bring the water to my apartment. I need the people to stock the shelves in Trader Joe's to make sure I can buy the food. I need a doctor to tell me what to eat, make sure my blood is good. I didn't go to school for that, so I can't do it myself. Yes, I could plant my own fruits and vegetables, but I live in New York City, so that's not really gonna be the thing to do all the time. So we all need each other. We might think we're just here alone, and honestly, we're here alone. If you're not a twin, you're born into this world alone, right? So that alone makes you feel like, yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, we all are interconnected in some way, and we all need each other in a way. You know what I'm saying? We all need to do our part to make sure our society can go properly and to make sure that things are running smoothly. If we had a no firefighters, but we had a bunch of fires, we'll just all be dead. Let's be honest. Like we all need to do a part. And if our mental health is off, we can't play that part as much as successfully as we need to do. So self-care, as I said before in the beginning, is needed. And yeah, do you have any last words for us, James?
No, I mean, if there's one thing I can leave you with, the kind of NAMI message as we promote Mental Health Awareness Month and do all of this advocacy work, it's healing begins in community, right? We're an organization that finds people who are struggling with mental health issues and family members, especially who are struggling with a loved one's mental health issue and feel like they're the only parent who's struggling with a youth's mental health issue, or uh, you know another relative like a parent or a spouse. Uh, it's kind of about showing up for each other.
Right.
It's finding these kind of groups and bringing everyone together, and that's what awareness looks like. That's it's ribbons that we put up, it's ads we put out, but the the end goal is building that community of mental health support, and especially for the folks who are struggling with mental health issues and homelessness issues. Right, this is a complex problem, and but we know they're also not. That it's all too common problem in the United States, and we can definitely do more to build that community for the mental health community or the people who've been lived through the homelessness issues. The more we connect with each other, the better off we'll be.
It's true. I definitely want to advocate for when people come out of shelter for the aftercare to be mental health. I think a lot of times I know I went to a person and she gave me a test and she said, "You're depressed." And I was like, and I denied it. Like my brain was just not there. I think a lot of times, not a think, I know for a fact after shelter after you leave, you kind of cut off from that world. And some things that you might have had in shelter, you're not going to have it outside. So I think we need to make sure people, when they leave shelter and exit shelter, that they have some of these mental health, when they actually are more settled down, they have time to breathe. That's probably when they are easier to get the help that they need for their mental health. Because I feel like a lot of time people are in survival mode when they're in shelter. I think honestly, anybody who went to shelter and who's homeless should got supportive housing, to be honest, just because it's not done after you're out of shelter. People take a while to kind of wind down. If you are a domestic violence survivor, to get your life together, not way too. But I was not a domestic violence survivor, but it took me a while to get my life together. And so I can imagine if you had added trauma onto that, how long it would take for you to get your life together. So think we need to make sure in that aftercare way that people do get that and not think, oh, they have an apartment, so they're fine now. They should be good. But the truth of the matter is, because they went through that trauma, some things have PTSD. I think of times in the shelter when I wasn't used to people always yelling, people knocking on like banging on doors, cops always there for so sometimes I used to not as much now think about the times like when people are yelling. Sometimes I'll go back to that moment when I heard people yelling in the shelter. I'm just not used to living like that. I'm not used to DV even happening around me. I grew up in a house. I was the loudest one there, and I'm pretty loud. And we didn't fight and yell like that, but I was mostly loud, like singing and dancing. Which and I'm Jamaican, so my household in general can be loud with music now and again. But I was the one doing the most of the ruckus, to be honest. Um, but I didn't grow up in people fighting, fist fighting, yelling at each other, stuff like that. That's just not how I grew up. So to go in an environment that I'm not used to, and everybody is in the same traumatizing event together, it was a lot for me. Like I've heard people screaming through a vent. Well, I don't think it's through the vent. I think it's just screaming in a room, but I just heard it through the vents in my room. And it was that they're trying to take her out the room and she didn't want to go. And I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. And I can remember that time so distinctly because she talking about the cops. For all I know, she could have been talking to herself. I don't know what happened. I didn't hear like anybody come into the room that I know of, but she was screaming from the top of her lungs for me to even hear her in the first place. Um, People fighting over a boy. It was just a bunch of stuff. And it was like, man, this is definitely a lot. So I think we need to make
Yeah,
sure that people, when they exit in shelter, they have these resources to make sure they can be okay and function properly in society.
yeah, it could definitely. What you're describing that like survival mode, but also that like the ability to kind of know you're safe
Right.
is a huge part of protecting your mental health. It's a huge part of like maintaining good mental health, but it's a big part of who we are as people is wanting to feel like we're safe in those spaces. And what you're describing, it's incredibly hard to go from that point to back in your own space, but still feel like, oh well, I'm this is a safe space now when you've just become accustomed to that shelter environment. It can be. I think we talk a lot about like the logistics. I'm a policy person by definition. I'm just wonky like that. But when we talk about taking the policy to the actual mental health and the real persons, right? We have to know that there's a psychological component and adjustment component going to the shelter, but also leaving the shelter and having that return to a place of steady home or steady home environment.
Yes, for sure. But guys, we have come to the end of the podcast. I hope that you guys are definitely understanding everything that we said. Know that self-care is important and it doesn't have to be something that's expensive unless you have the money to go to a spa or do something like that. It could just be walking outside and not picking up your phone. It could be something simple as music. Depending on the person you are and the thing that makes you the happiest, that is your self-care item. Okay, guys? Do not forget to love on yourself. Do not forget to be kind to others. I know people give you attitude, but it might be attitude just this moment because something happened to them. We don't know. Somebody could be in the hospital in their family. We don't know. We just don't know all the factors why they're upset that day. But don't make that ruin your day, but say something kind to them that makes their day even happier than it should be. Not should be, but happier for them that it is. So yes, guys, follow us on all social media platforms. Definitely, if you want to be on a podcast, email me, DM me. If you need help, probably DM me because it's faster. All of it goes to my phone, but I pick up honestly the DMs faster than I pick up the emails, to be honest. If I hire more staff, when I hire more staff soon, I will have people to look out for that so I could be able to do that. But yes, and all our staff will be people who have lived experience. So definitely check that out. Send the information down below, cover letter and resume, and we'd love to have you on our team. Thank you, and I talk to you next time. Bye.